do really demo heavy, really code heavy, or talk about it, but I would like to be an open book. I would have loved to have been able to ask somebody who had co-founded a company questions 20 years ago. And so I actually don't think that I have anything special about me here, but I happen to be in the right spot in the right time to co-found a company that took off and was successful, and so that experience might be useful to someone in here. So anyway, that'll be fun. We can sort of ask questions. All right, we good to go?
Good to go.
Sorry about that,
Hey.
guys. Thanks for being supportive of my emotional issues.
I love it. All right, well, as you can see, this is a very corporate slide. I am representing CDW, and it's going to be very corporate, and I will only say exactly what I'm supposed to say, only when I'm supposed to say it, because it's corporate, and I must be qualified to give this presentation because I read the AI book last week, and as you know, AI solves everything these days. And no, seriously though, this is actually why I'm qualified to speak, because I read this book last week. Just kidding, I read it a while ago. I don't know if you guys know Joe Reese, but he's awesome, and
He used to run
this meetup, but definitely read the book. So for reals, it was back in '99. I was studying that blank screen. How did we get to blank screen? Let's see what we got.
Oh, it's this screen because I still have it. So it's the room. We're having IT difficulties.
Uh-oh. Man, it was right before the punchline, too.
Actually, I don't know how to redo the room stuff because, like I said, I have it on my screen still. So can't be anything to here. Could be anything after that, though.
Both of the monitors went off at the same time.
Yeah, I wonder if they're like,
giving away.
They have a timer.
it's like a,
They could have a timer.
yeah, it just hit 7 o'clock, so.
Oh yeah.
7 o'clock, time to go.
Yeah. That would be good.
Okay, here we go.
Hey, you got it back?
Yeah. All right. And what do we need to do here? No, it's good. Okay. So yes, back in '99, I was studying this picture. But I don't know if you guys can see, this is actually .com stuff. And so really the truth is, I actually was studying this picture, and that's why I'm qualified. So does anyone know what this is?
Is that the data engineering landscape?
Oh, you can't tell them. She knows. Does anyone else know what this is?
Guys, you just gotta follow Joe Reese on social media.
So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. This is the mad landscape for 2024. These are all, does anyone know what these are? These are all companies that are in the data space. They're all producing software to help us with data infrastructure. And so, as you can imagine, there actually is a job role for helping people make sense of this and like, what should we use? What technology should we use?
Is CDW on there somewhere?
I looked down in data consulting and I didn't see, I mean, we've got Deloitte, we've got Quantum Black, but the cool thing is this little category here, where is it? Yeah, I think it's probably down below the screen where you guys can see. Is it? Come on, where is it? We've got open source. Okay, data quality and observability. And that category did not exist back in 2017. This diagram actually looked a lot simpler from 2013, 14, 15. This category did not exist until a little company called Great Expectations came along. And that's the one that I was able to co-found with Abe Gong. And you see it under open source infrastructure. So that's a data quality company that we started. And so they actually made that category. We were the first ones in the category. And too bad we didn't win the category because we didn't do everything right. But anyways, it's been really fun to watch as the ecosystem has changed and to actually be a part of it. So, as you all know, when you start a company, it's all about the offsites. That's what tech firms do, is they have really cool offsites and they post pictures about it. And we did do that. And if you're a co-founder, you have to wear yellow shoes so everyone knows who you are. But that is one of the highlights of my life. Besides my personal family, this group of people are the kind of a big highlight of my life, is the group of people that we started that company with. And now what I do is I just go around and take pictures with famous data people. And so that's why CDW hired me, because I have lots of pictures with famous people. And we even have Joe Reese here. So Joe Reese is I think the founder of this meetup.
This one, yeah.
But no, seriously, they did say I had to make a resume, so I do have that as well. But mostly what I do is I teach people, clients, about principles for data architecture. This is I even thought it was cool. I'm sure somebody else coined the term iron layer, but I was like, hey, we got bronze, silver, gold, but we need an iron layer because I got to do some data quality checks on stuff when it lands in the raw. Anyway, that was something. One of the things I do with CDW is teach our clients our data quality framework and how we implement that. And I put that out in the open, so it's technically open. I don't know if I can call it open source unless I make a GitHub repo, but it is open. And then we help them do it by just implementing some of that stuff. So that's a little bit about my team at CDW. And I actually work with Scott, so he's here, which I'm super pumped that you came, Scott, so thank you. So I guess I have learned a few things in the last decade talking with companies. Mostly it's how to keep people from experiencing that. We had people saying here, that they're in BI. We had people saying they're in engineering. And there's data science. And a lot of people are affected by quality problems. But you don't just read the data contract and have it solved. I couldn't help but use that. The final thing is, the reason why I can talk to you is because I know how to use ChatGPT. And so you should use ChatGPT for everything at this point, especially when you're trying to come up with a data quality process. It'll help you. You'll do data profiling, cleaning, and it looks like we have enlightenment and validation and monitoring. So ChatGPT will really help you do that. We're going to go through a little bit of history and then talk about what's governance and how do we do minimum viable governance. And of course, I've stolen that term. But who can tell me what was happening in business and data, specifically in the 1800s to maybe 1950? I've got the answers for what was happening with data quality, but what was happening with business and data in 1800s?
Doing the census? The US Census trying to count everybody?
Probably something like that. Business-wise, I was not aware of business intelligence, but it really started in the 1850s.
But they had accountants.
Well, they had accountants, but again,
but if they had the stock market, they were doing financial predictions, which is.
Well, let's see. I don't know when the stock market started.
The stock market was, what, 1880 or something?
1880.
1840s.
But like before there was any sort of exchange, individual companies mostly would use their own information to run their business, right?
Yeah.
But it started to become a thing where they were like, oh, if we collect data better than our competitors, we might actually do better because of our data. And so in the 1850s, business intelligence was just starting with a few people that were like, yeah, actually data is, so of course, let's collect it better manually, right? Write it on ledgers, do better at keeping that. Okay, let's go through 1950s. Let's go rapid fire. What was happening in computing?
Large mainframes were getting started.
Mainframes, exactly. And then in the 1970s and 80s, what was happening? You've got software.
Wait,
Right,
that's when Bill Inman wrote his paper.
That's true.
I told you I follow Joe on
So
social media.
software changed from ones and zeros to programmers telling a computer with ones and zeros all the way down what to do to, hey, let's get some higher level stuff. That's where you have the first sort of higher level languages. And so data quality, though, that's the first time. Data quality back here was like, well, you have to pay more to hire the person who's doing the ones and zeros, typing it in, so that they actually do a better job of that. That was data quality. Here, it becomes a service. And then in the 1990s, businesses start to have business software that runs things, and we start to say, oh, hey, we should like govern this from a business perspective because it's going to make a difference to our business. And then what happened in the 2000s in data and computing? Early 2000s. Hadoop, dot-com bubble happens, and then we have distributed computing. Right at the beginning, 2003, 4, Yahoo and a lot of these people with Yahoo sort of worked together to figure out, hey, we can do distributed computing and we can take care of a lot more data. And that all happened because of, the internet. So then early 2010s, what happens? Did Hadoop really deliver on its promise of scaling the world's data systems? No, because it was largely just too complex, and it also didn't reduce any of that infrastructure that you had to manage. And so then you have the cloud take off, and it's like, oh, we could do both. We could have data up on the cloud, and then we could have data being processed on somebody else's infrastructure and scaling it. So this is what the interesting part for me. What happened in the late, let's see, do I have it here? I don't know if I have it here. Late 2020s, lots of vendors start to emerge with the cloud. But specifically, data governance had just been a kind of an old, stodgy, let's do enterprise data governance. And then all of a sudden you started having these really high profile security breaches when people had their data up in the cloud. So 2016, 17, data governance, which was just data quality, became security. And since then, I don't know, when I say data governance to you, what do you think?
Quality side of it.
You think equality?
I think
Who thinks security?
I think security.
A lot of people think security now. If we had asked this question 10 years ago, 20 years ago, everyone would have been saying data quality. But security became the top of mind for most people because of these high profile breaches, and everyone knows that. It becomes a huge deal, huge fines. So now data governance is kind of a mixture of those two things. And not that anyone else really cares, because this is my field and I care about it, but it's a big deal to businesses, even though data governance is often looked at as a kind of a boring topic. It is a huge deal. And I lost my screen.
Again? Oh,
No,
I don't
now
have
it's
it anymore.
now it's this screen.
Does that mean it's this now?
That's going directly there.
No, this is going into the Teams meeting, and that's broadcasting to Teams.
Ah, gotcha. Huh.
I don't know. Here for the ride.
Should we?
You can try plugging it back in, but I don't know how-
Apologies.
if there's a way to control it on this thing. Oh Oh, now it's just Mike. There you go. You're back.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about governance from the perspective of business and what does a business want to do? And then our job, a lot of people say, oh man, when we have data quality problems or we have issues with security, that's like, it's somebody else's fault. Like the business created this problem like because of X, Y, and Z. They modeled the data wrong in the upstream system. They want it to be like so fast, and then we have to create this all at the end of our day and like working into the night, and now we have data quality problems. So I like to look at it more as not a problem that somebody else created, but an opportunity because that's my career, that's what I'm doing. We all get paid to sort of do stuff in data. And so I look at that as like the way the world is. This is just the way it works. And so I'm not upset if the downstream system pumps a bunch of data quality issues to me because that's the way the world works, and that's what we're doing. But how do you get up to speed and use the minimum amount of data quality, data governance that you need and get up to speed quickly? So a lot of vendors promote their products in that space, and they say, oh, you use our product, and look, the roads are going to be straight and everything's going to work. And we all know better, if we've worked in data, that it just doesn't work that way. And it becomes this huge mess, and we have to figure out how to manage that. And so I'm going to talk about what's in here, and then what do we actually need. So data privacy and security, obviously, that keeping the wrong data out of the wrong hands, keeping people's personal identifiable information from getting into hands that shouldn't have it. Then there's lifecycle management. If you want to use data for a time period, does that mean you should still have it on your systems in 6 years from now? Should it still be sitting there, or should we be able to delete it? What if somebody says, no, I don't want you to have my data anymore? Can we get rid of that data? So stuff like that. And then how does it actually work in a real business is we need to manage who's in charge of the data, what are the processes they're doing to manage data quality, and then what's the metadata about the data that helps us see it and observe it from outside. And then a little thing we call master and reference data management, which basically, when you get to be a big company, you've got to be able to understand that this customer is this customer is this customer. Because if you send them 3 letters and then 2 emails and then you send them 2 catalogs, you're just wasting a ton of money, and they're getting annoyed now and they're not going to like you. So that's what that is. But what do we have to, that sounds expensive, right? To do this. And so like a lot of companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they spend years getting their data governance program working. And the question is, like, what can we do right away? How can we get a program going? Kind of like software, we have a minimum viable product. Let's get it out, let's see how it works, and let's get going. And then we get feedback as we go. Can we do that with governance? And so a couple of my colleagues were thinking about that, and we're like, could we get governance going on day 1 in a new company? And that's kind of the question we're answering here. So we'll come back to this triangle at the end, but this is basically like your tools, your landscape, your architectures. This is your processes, people, and tech that help you govern that and see it. And data culture is kind of what you do. It's, we're all here, just how do we do things? And I like to think of data culture in our AI world as kind of a cognitive firewall for problems that are associated with AI. Because it sort of blocks all the bad things that could happen with AI if people think about it and they think like, well, what should we do with this? So in our world where people click on, the first result on Google, we have to think about that first result when it's AI that's producing it, right? So let's talk about, we already went through that, it's people. Oh, look at those cute people. So people, processes, and policies, and some tech. Okay, So what do we need to do on day one? Let's say you're a mid-sized company and you're not a public company yet, you're small, mid-market, and you've hired like 2 or 3 data people, maybe even just 1 data person. You've got somebody doing reporting and you've got an engineer, right? So what do we got to do with governance to make sure our company does well? What's important?
Data quality.
Data quality.
Quality first.
And why is that important first?
Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out, and specifically, we're probably using data at that point to drive our business to try to succeed to get past the point of default dead. Default dead is when if you don't do anything different, your company will go out of business and you'll all be looking for a new job. Default alive is like Microsoft. If they don't do anything smart and good, they're going to be default alive till we're all dead, right? They're just going to keep running. You can do a lot of stupid stuff if you're that big and you still make tons of money and you're still okay. If you're a small mid-market company, you do stupid stuff and you kind of die. So data quality drives that, so you kind of have to manage that right off the bat. What else do you need?
I guess it's going to kind of depend on, is the data your product, or are you using the data internally to make analytics decisions?
Yeah.
If the data is your product, you better get that security management right, because your data set's going to be facing the public.
Good point, good point. So, and I'm looking at it from the other perspective, where it's an internal for analytics, but yeah, it would be the exact opposite. If data is your product, security would probably be the top of the list. Yep. So I'm going to just say, I think we can start with these 4. I think data quality kind of is this, because if you do good data quality, you probably have good entity resolution, but we might use a little bit of help with entity resolution. And let's manage our metadata just so we can get some metrics and metadata about the data so we can see if it's good quality. And if I say this to anybody, they're going to say, yeah, but security. So we're going to keep the yeah, but security in the back of our heads, because I'm going to sort of say, well, I think we can do it this way. So this, I have, let's see, how much time? I got to do time check to how far.
You've been 20 minutes in. Well, minus details, so like minus the hiccups we've had.
So try to go
15.
to about 7:35,
So
7:40.
7:35, 7:40 would be ideal, but
Okay.
7:45 is not going to make anybody upset.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show maybe one of these videos. All of them are available. Do I promise that? I publish them on LinkedIn, but all of them are just sort of like the code is available and I can share any information with you, but we're not going to have time to go through all of them, but we'll go through a few. So this one specifically, data quality. Can you like, instead of buying a $100,000 product or even a $20,000 product or even a $500 product, can I just do data quality in my database? And it turns out a lot of databases have a lot of stuff that you can do, and it gets you pretty far. And you can do it on you can set it up on day 0 and get going on day 1. So null counts, duplicates, invalid values, and row counts, I can set that stuff up in an hour. And if I'm using Snowflake, they have something called data metric functions. If I'm using if I'm using Databricks, they have Databricks expectations. If I'm using, I can't remember what it's called in SQL Server. They have it in like all sorts of different databases. You have different functions that you can use. And then you can write some queries to help give you some lineage, and you can visualize that stuff. So, and that code, I am gonna, let's see, I think, okay, let's talk about data profiling. So I like to say that when you see a new data set, select star is the equivalent of it was a dark and stormy night, because you just like, okay, what are we going to find in here? It's the beginning of the story, and you don't know until you do that select star, group by all, or however you do it. So profiling, there's some really cool tools that are available. This one I'm doing, who's done like pandas profiling or Y data profiling? Okay, so pandas profiling actually switched to Y data profiling if you haven't used it in a few years. And this is literally the code. It's seriously, it's only like it's like 3 lines of code. You just have to get into your session and you've got to connect to data, and then you just say profile, and it does it for you, and it gives you this nice little profiling output. So yeah, what you do with profiling is, oh man, the video is just so much better. Let's do that video, and then I won't do any other ones. Okay. And of course I don't have it up here. Come on. I forgot to do this, dang it. Wait. Man, I don't remember where this is. I'll find the videos, and if anyone wants to see them, I'll send them to you afterwards. And then what we'll do is, why is it not going back? Okay. I can share the videos, the code samples, and everything if you talk to me afterwards. And then for right now, we'll talk about sort of how it works and what it's doing. Profiling allows you to see really quickly what the data shape looks like. And so you can both visually find problems, and you can find problems with other tools automatically. So as we look at data quality monitoring, we might want to monitor the shape of that data. So before we're just looking, what's the shape of the data? Well, what if it changes? And so then you have tools like Great Expectations, which is the one that I was part of, that can monitor that and see how things change. For counting null values, like, is it out of range now? Do we want it to be 0? And so there's all sorts of quality monitoring checks that you can put on and monitor it over time. And then there's lots of tools out there that do that now. So Great Expectations is one of the popular open source ones. And then you've got a lot of tools that do that as well, that are SaaS. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there AI data quality tools where you can say, this column looks like an address, this column looks like an, so you don't have to tell them what an address looks like, it just kind of looks like it and pops up suspect.
Yeah, so we have, there are tools that will go through and auto-label and auto-classify, and that was one of the things in one of the videos I was showing is just auto-classification. That is built into most of the metadata management platforms. It's built into Snowflake directly. So Snowflake, you can just click like classify my data, and it'll go through and it'll say, this looks like an address, this looks like a social security number, and this is an ID that you need to be careful about. So it's built into a lot. I'm assuming it'll be built into most things coming up, but.
So like your first step would be doing the auto classification. But then are there tools like you can periodically run? So I auto-classified this column as a street address, and then it periodically runs and says, whoa, that doesn't look like a street address.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the auto-classify gives you kind of what it should be, and then you would use Great Expectations or some other tool to be monitoring that to make sure that it stays that way that you're expecting it. Yeah, that's one way to do it. There's probably there might be a better way to do it, like integrated, but that's one way to do it. So master data management. When you have all your data coming from all these different systems, if I've got a customer coming from here and it's John Doe, and the customer is coming from here and it's John capital D period, and then one from up here and it's John Doe with an undercase D. How do we know those are the same person and that we make sure our analytics is based off that? And so there's several different ways to do master data management, but one way, probably the most thorough way, is to have all that data come out here, gets figured out the identity management, and then go back to the data warehouse. What I wanted to show is that there are, escape, come on.
Little applications to the right of the data warehouse.
What?
So on the right side of the data warehouse, are those little applications?
On the right side of the data warehouse, those are, no, those would probably be like little marts for reporting, like little data marts, which have super specific, like it would be sales data, or it might be, HR data. Okay, how do you escape out of this? Are you kidding me?
A lot of like CDPs, isn't that what they're always built as? They can handle all the identity resolution.
Yes, that's exactly what they do. That's exactly what they do. And that's what I was going to basically bring us here to look at identity resolution with Zing AI. The title of this presentation was with popular open source tools. So Zing said, yeah, there's all these CDPs, there's all these complex master data management solutions, and they cost a ton of money, right? Well, I shouldn't say a ton of money. It's really cheap if you're a big business, if you're Microsoft and you got to get a handle on that, it's super cheap to pay, $100 million to get this solved. But for a small business or a mid-sized business that's getting going and they don't want to spend $200,000 on an implementation, what do you do? So then they have these open source companies that come out. So Zing AI has a really cool, it's called a solution accelerator, where you can go on Databricks' site if you're using Databricks and you see how to do Zing AI on Databricks. And so I'll show kind of a little bit of that. For those of you who are engineers, you're going to love this. It just walks you through all the code. Oh, I don't know if this is going to actually work with the network here, but yeah, I don't think this is going to work with the network, so I won't worry about it. It basically shows you all the code you need to write to get Zing going and to do your entity resolution, and it's free, open source. You install it, and you're good to go. And I can't do internet here, so no worries.
Sorry, I'm taking all the bandwidth with my screen,
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
pretty much.
No worries. No worries. Okay, so then what about metadata management? What are we using for that? What? Okay, does anyone get the joke? Scott, do you?
Oh, man.
Okay, if you're Snowflake people, this is the Polaris catalog that Snowflake just released in the open source. They made it open source. It's crazy, but you can now use the Polaris catalog for free, and you can use it on an open format, data lake storage, Iceberg, or you could use it on Databricks. You can use it for like a Spark streaming, jobs on Azure Blob Storage, or you can use it on Postgres. And so you can do it open source. There's a few open source catalogs, but it's really cool that Polaris is, because you can kind of dabble in the open source world and then dabble in the super slick, easy to go data warehouse, Snowflake, which a lot of people like that. That allows you then to manage your data and kind of see what's happening and see what all your data assets are in a catalog, and you can do that in an open way. So I told somebody, yeah, security, we have to come back to it. I thought we could do it without. So what happened at Snowflake a couple months ago? Had the big breach, right? Does anyone know how that actually happened? So if you're following Snowflake but not too closely, then you would be like, oh shoot, Snowflake just had hundreds of, tons of customer data just got breached. AT&T is like screaming, it's super bad. Their stock price plummeted. And you think, wow, is Snowflake safe? And the damage is done to Snowflake. But what's super interesting about this breach is that it really happened because people didn't enable multi-factor authentication. So if you had had multi-factor authentication, you wouldn't have been touched by that breach, which seems really simple, right? So when we talk about security, sometimes there's just a little bit of security that you can do that makes a big difference. Nobody would have gotten their data stolen if they had that. So then, of course, Snowflake says we're now going to force you to do it, and Databricks is like, we're going to force you to do it. So that's probably what they should have done in the first place, is just make it harder for people to opt out of multi-factor authentication. So yeah, you can implement that sort of stuff as well as just making sure that your data is encrypted at rest and encrypted in transit and making sure that you're not sharing data out of firewalls and things like that. You can do all that very easily on day 0. You can set that up, and you can set up those policies and make sure that people follow them. All right, so because I told you that AI solves everything, we have to end this talk with AI, right? So how does this relate to AI? I'm going to ask a couple questions. How do kids learn how to talk? They're trained. You use that word. Yeah, they're trained. They're trained on what data? Their parents' words, their parents talking, right? Or some other people talking around them. And so how did software learn how to behave before AI?
Being told what to do.
It's being told what to do directly, right? And so that's not as scalable as having it be able to figure out what to do, right? But how does AI work? It actually learns like children learn. It's trained, and like children, their data set is words that other people are saying in sentences. What AI learns to do is it learns from the data you give it, which is basically examples of whatever you want. That's its data. And so when we talk about data being the foundation, that's literally how AI works, is it goes through and learns by example, and it'll do whatever you train it to do. And I didn't put it in here, but there's tons of examples of how, the AI just sort of, I don't know if any of you saw how fast Reddit took down Gemini, I think it was, or some of the other ones, because if you give it data that's no good, that's what you're going to get.
David, I was thinking of that little 3-year-old at the dinner table.
Yeah?
It says the wrong word.
Yeah, exactly. That's, and you're like, where did you learn that from? It couldn't have been from me, right? Yeah, that's exactly what's happening with. So that is pretty much the end of my, okay. That becomes pretty important in business. I want to go back to what I said about data culture. Data culture is the cognitive firewall that protects business and organizations from what AI can do if you don't manage that. And it's like the best antivirus software is what's between your ears. It's the same thing here. It's that's your data culture is kind of how you behave with data and what you do with data in an organization. And that is going to help you a lot more than any sort of monitoring system. At this point, we do not have foolproof technology solutions to block AI from doing bad stuff. We just have people chasing it as fast as they can. And so we do have solutions, but they're not 100% foolproof, right? And so the best solution is your data culture. Okay, so any questions? I'd love to just be an open book and talk about anything about where I've been and what I see.
Despite doing this for a couple of decades, I don't think I've ever done metadata management. Could you define that
Yeah.
for me?
Yeah, so
Maybe
there's...
I have been doing it, just didn't know it.
You probably have. You probably have. So the most basic metadata management would be like a data dictionary for a table. So if I have column names, descriptions of what's in that column, and I have table names, that is probably the most basic and first form of metadata management. And then the way that works is people send that spreadsheet all over, like, do you have the data dictionary? Do you have it? Because we're building something, we got to know what's in those columns. And currently a good example of that is Power BI. If any of you work with Power BI, you can't get Copilot to work unless you have the metadata for that table in really good shape, because Copilot has to read that metadata in order to know when you say, give me the sum of the sales for last year, it's got to read the metadata to know what sales is and what columns it should go to and things like that. So that's the most basic form, and then it goes all the way up to tracking other metrics about tables and data. And a data catalog is the kind of top of the line way that you manage metadata.
For some reason, I assumed those two things were separate. Data catalog, glossary dictionary, and then the metadata management was over here.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more AI processes that now they're trying to build into data catalogs to say, oh, can you automatically grant access to this table, for example? And so it uses your metadata to then go automatically do some stuff. And so there's a lot of automation built into a lot of the catalogs now.
Okay. Would you think like classification, managing your classifications, which has become really important with all the privacy stuff of, flagging columns as,
Yep.
being
Being PII or yeah, that is,
you have to manage that metadata.
yep.
So that's another really important aspect of it.
So that's metadata that you would want to keep track of, that then you can build rules on top of that metadata to say, hey, any of the columns that have a PII flag, do not expose that to these users and stuff like that. Okay,
I was going to ask about Great Expectations and
Yeah.
kind of inventing a category there of data quality. What was it like trying to sell that to different customers? And did you see a shift, like at some point where it was like people started to get it and you kind of
Yeah.
made the vision easier? What was that?
So what that created in me was a belief in open source, number one, and number two, in product-led growth. Instead of going out and selling something to people, it was get the product in the hands of the people, see what they do with it, see if they want it or if they don't want it and how they use it, and then try to get it out as far as you can, and then try to sell it and make money. So Great Expectations was super fun to do at first because it was free. It was free and open source, so the first couple of years we didn't make any money. I was making money doing consulting services while the other half of the business was not making money, just building this data quality tool. And so that was stressful for me, but super fun for the other engineers. Anyway, doing that at first, we watched as it started to grow, and we would say things like, okay, well, we can focus 10% or 20% on this. And then there was a point where it was like, oh, this is going to be bigger than anything we're doing else. We have to switch. And that point with watching in the open source world, you can kind of see how many people are using it. We started tracking metrics like how many people are downloading this. And you look on PyPy and you see downloads, and then you look on GitHub stars, and then you look on the Slack channel that we had. What's the growth in people in the Slack channel? How many people are asking questions, and then how many PRs are we getting in the GitHub? and you start to see it go up, and we realized, whoa, this is going to take off. And that's when we went out to investors and said, can you guys give us some capital so we can build this? And so then we raised money, raised 3 or 4 rounds of money that allowed us to kind of develop it up to where it is today. So yeah, it was very, very exciting. And I downloaded the data until we automated figuring it out every week and just like looked at that, like, you know, the graph, like, is it still going up? And then like, oh shoot, it's not going up. Like, what had happened? And it was very stressful too. My wife's here today, Emily, and she lived through that. And then eventually we decided, I decided that I needed to step away from being a founder because I just couldn't handle it anymore. So not doing it anymore, but it was a thrill ride. It was great. So I'm still an advisor there, and we chat, but I don't do it day to day. Happy to chat afterwards about that. Yeah.
The question of like, oh, these paid $100,000, $1 million solutions that the big companies can buy versus the open source and everything in between. Do you, given your background and the stuff that you've talked about, how do you see most mid-size, mid-market companies manage the build versus buy kind of stuff in the data space?
Yeah,
like
that's a great question.
Evaluating hosting Polaris ourselves versus, you know, buying another data catalog solution.
Yeah, so I'll say that you can spend a lot more money on a free catalog than on a paid one if you don't have the right people and the people that are ready to build it. So usually when I'm doing the open source versus buy question, I'm looking at the team and who's on the team. If it's heavy data engineers and software engineers, often open source is going to make sense and it's going to be cheaper. If it's not, if it's more like business users, maybe analysts who don't necessarily get into the code too much, usually I would recommend you not do a full open source implementation because it ends up being more expensive through either problems that you have or you got to hire someone to do it. So that's one question. The other question is, are these other solutions all super expensive? Like, can you, so there are some that have the different pricing models. Some of the newer ones, like, I don't know Atlan's pricing model very well, but I know some of them are based on like your usage. And so I'm thinking of data.world. That's a catalog that has a lot of ability to kind of grow up as you go. They know that you're not going to be able to go in and put everything in the catalog right at once. So some of them are based on kind of as you grow, your pricing grows. But I personally, even though I'm a coder, I still have a hard time wanting to just sell somebody on 100% open source when it comes to data catalog because the open source ones currently are not, they have not caught up to the functionality of the paid ones. And the paid ones have so much nice functionality that I'm still where I am. I would have to have everyone on my team be as technical or more than me in order for me to say, let's go open source. But if I was a team of 1, I would do open source. And if I was a team of 2 or 3, we'd do that open source so we could save money while we're getting going until we really needed a data catalog. Because you could get started with like just a tiny bit of functionality. So does that help?
Just to kind of discuss a little further on that point, from experience I've seen, you really need a data manager. You need a subject matter expert on that data to really effectively populate that kind of data catalog. Have you seen a similar kind of thing, or would you contradict what I say?
No, yeah, you have to have, so we had data stewardship up there. That fits under governance because you have to have owners that do it. And what normally happens is everyone rolls their eyes when you say we're going to do data governance rollout because it's people who are doing their day job, and then you say, now you have to do data governance too. So you're gonna be an owner, and the person's like, and I already work 10 hours a day, and now I gotta do this. And so the way we get around that is, one, you have executive buy-in and sponsorship. You have to put money behind it. And number two is, instead of looking for somebody to assign the task to, you look for somebody who's already doing the task. So whether or not you say you are or not, you are doing data governance. You're either just doing a very poor job of it, or you're doing a good job of it, but somebody's doing it. And you find who's doing it already, and you say, okay, now we're gonna give you credit for doing that work. And it goes a lot better to kind of implement, when now they're on a spreadsheet that the CEO can see, oh, these are the people who are working on data governance, as opposed to just, it's my weekend's job. But yeah, it doesn't work without people. And there is a lot of promise around AI to do it, but I'm actually advising a company right now that's trying to solve this, where we can do it all with AI, and I just don't believe they're gonna succeed. But they'll get closer, and then we'll have a lot more of this that can be automatic. But
Any shortcut helps. If it's a good.
yes. So like for data governance, I mean, like I said, in Snowflake, you do the automatic classifying. There's a lot of that stuff. If so Cater AI is a company right now that is working on trying to figure out how we can ask the questions in real text, real language, and say, how do we get this metadata for these tables and whatever, and it'll start to talk with you and reason with you, and it's trying to help you build a plan to go manage these tables. So it's coming. We're gonna have some good AI solutions coming out. But you gotta have people involved. Humans in the loop.
Cool, is that it?
All right. Well, thanks everybody.